You can't have a podcast, and the way that you think you can make money is on clicks and views at the expense of others, and not expect to have to pay the expense. And I probably, see, first of all, when I said that, I was on stage at Earn Your Leisure.
Mm-hmm.
I was really just joking. I slap your perm, all this. I was just in front of a whole lot of people. I was really just joking. I don't really, if I had a chance to talk to Katt about anything, I would just ask him what's wrong.
It appears Steve Harvey still hasn't moved past Shannon Sharpe giving Katt Williams a platform to criticize him. Earlier this week, Steve appeared on the Pivot podcast, where he subtly accused Shannon of being disloyal and chasing views, without saying it outright. Steve seems bothered that the club Shay interview with Katt Williams, which has now surpassed 90 million views, has become the most watched interview in YouTube history. During that interview, Katt spent a significant portion openly criticizing Steve, calling him untrustworthy, labeling him a snake, and accusing him of betraying mutual friends. The fallout from those comments hasn't reflected well on Steve, and Steve is well aware of the situation. He knows that even if he does interviews for the rest of his life trying to refute Katt's claims, none of them will reach the massive audience that Katt's interview already has. The reach and impact of that one interview are hard to compete with. Here's what Steve Harvey had to say about Shannon Sharpe during his appearance on the Pivot podcast.
Y'all got a podcast and you're doing it brilliantly. Please don't stop doing the way you do. See, the problem with people is they get something that work and then they want to find something that work better. You ain't got to fix it if it ain't broke. See, I'm on radio for real. I have a real radio show. I have the #1 adult contemporary show, 25 to 54 in America. The Steve Harvey Morning Show. I'm at 112 markets. I got 9 million listeners. I'm controlled by FCC rules. The problem is, these people go get these podcasts who have no FCC rules to abide by. But you have to remember, even though you're on a podcast, you still got a brand.
Yeah.
And so you can't say what you want to say and expect to be relevant and not get canceled. You can't have a podcast, and the way that you think you can make money is on clicks and views at the expense of others, and not expect to have to pay the expense. You can't have a podcast and light me up and don't expect to get lit up. You can't have a podcast, let somebody come on your show and talk about your friends.
It's clear that Steve Harvey is referring to Shannon Sharpe in his comments, although he explicitly mentions Shannon later on. Here, he's indirectly addressing what Katt Williams said about him during his appearance on Shannon's Club Shay podcast. If you don't recall what was said, here's a quick reminder of Katt Williams' remarks about Steve Harvey on that episode.
The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. Now Steve got a sitcom where he the principal and he wear a suit and then he gets this high top fade, making all black men think he got the best lineup in the business, and it's a man unit.
What made Katt Williams' interview resonate with many of his critics was that much of what he claimed could be quickly verified with a simple online search. So, when Katt brought up allegations involving Steve Harvey, all people had to do was reference what Mark Curry had said about Steve not long before. The consistency made it harder to dismiss Katt's statements outright.
So what's up with you and Steve, man?
Ain't nothing with me. Well, Steve stole my material on his show, so I had a beef on that.
On what show?
When he was on the bullshit talk show he had, and he did all my Halloween material one Halloween. I'm watching, somebody called me and said, man, homeboy doing your material. So he did my whole Halloween run. And I know he didn't think of it. You know, this is true stuff that really happened to me. And so my thing is, you didn't have to do that, homeboy. Right. So, you know, you made enough money. You know, wow. You made enough money, you did enough. You know, why are you on my material?
Right.
You know, what's that about?
Katt also pointed to similarities between the two sitcoms in question, suggesting that Steve Harvey may have borrowed from Mark Curry's show. When viewers compared the shows, they noticed overlapping elements in style and presentation. This added credibility to Katt's claims and helped the interview gain widespread attention. But Katt didn't stop there. He also criticized the way Steve had treated others and suggested Steve had aspirations of becoming a movie star, often at the expense of others.
Then you asked him, why you not a movie star? I didn't want to be a movie star. This the same Negro that hated on Bernie with this same thing. I didn't want to be a movie star. No, you couldn't be a movie star. There are 30,000 new scripts in Hollywood every year. Not one of them asks for a country bumpkin black dude that can't talk good Oba-Kaby and look like Mr. Potato Head. There ain't none. You would have to have range. I played a lot of characters, 60 movie roles. I'm not playing Katt Williams in there.
I don't know, Katt. We might not let you drink anymore the way I mean, we ain't even got.
I'm not fueled by alcohol. I've had a sip, less than you. This is like Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey wasn't never homeless. When Mark Curry was touring with him 25 years ago, he was making $3,000 a show in cash and doing 5 shows a week. They just tell the stories. Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that? You told us it was her, then you went and married somebody else that think like a man. Like, what are you talking about? They think they can rewrite history. Guy Torrey did a beautiful special about the Comedy Store and Fat Tuesday, where he said that Steve and Cedric and Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish came through there and made... All lies. Steve and Cedric never performed at the Comedy Store at all. Tiffany was only seen at the Laugh Factory. In 15 years in Hollywood, no one in Hollywood has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about.
Although Steve briefly addresses Katt Williams in his response, his main frustration seems directed at Shannon Sharpe. His argument is straightforward. If you're hosting someone on your platform, and that person is making serious claims about your associates, then there's a level of responsibility involved in how it's handled. At this point, it's unclear how close Shannon Sharpe and Steve Harvey actually were. What is known, however, is that Steve had appeared on Club Shay before Katt Williams did. At the time, Steve Harvey was arguably Shannon's biggest guest on the podcast, at least until the Katt Williams interview aired. That said, Steve seems to feel that Shannon owed him the courtesy of stopping the conversation once his name was brought up. But here's the dilemma. If Shannon gives that level of respect to Steve Harvey, then other comedians might expect the same. They might question, wait a minute, Shannon, why did you shut it down for Steve but not for me? And if you start doing that, you're essentially opening the door to more complications. In that case, you'd have to consider not doing the interview at all. Someone like Kevin Hart could easily come forward and ask, why did you stop Katt from speaking about Steve, but not when it was about me? And that leads to even more backlash and scrutiny.
You can't have a podcast, let somebody come on your show and talk about your friends.
I agree.
Okay, you got a podcast. Y'all got a guest on here. And he starts slamming Fred. He knows something about Fred, happened in the past, will lie or not, and just start slamming Fred. Y'all got to shut that down.
Yeah.
Because this your brother. You got to protect him. And you got to protect the brand. They don't do that no more. So you come on my show, you spread all these lies about some people that I call my so-called friends, and I just let you sit there and check it. And because your podcast had so many views on that right there, your next guest is the same type of guest. Because now you want your money to be made off clicks and views at somebody's expense. Well, now guess what? You got to pay for that. Because once you put it out in the universe that I want clicks and views, the universe does not differentiate. It just gives you clicks and views. So now, here they come the rest of them. And now you got clicks and views.
My question to that, though, is there was the podcast, and there was a comedian who talked about you. And you waited a while before ever responding to Katt Williams. Mm-hmm. But when you responded, it felt like there was a lot more vitriol to your response than it was all of the initial accusations. Why do you think the response to what you said was so different from what he said on Shannon's show?
When you say vitriol, what you mean?
The social media fodder was upset with you for the way you finally responded to him. Mm-hmm. You mentioned his height and what you could do if there was ever an altercation. They said they felt like what he said about you was true because of the nature of your reaction.
Oh, well, see, first of all, I ain't really good at social media, so I didn't even know that was out there. But they can, like, really kiss most of the corners of my ass when you say stuff like that. First of all, man, let me say this.
Again, I'm not certain how deep the relationship between Shannon Sharpe and Steve Harvey really is. Without that context, it's hard to say whether Shannon had any real obligation to defend or protect Steve during that interview. But here's a broader perspective. There's a difference between industry connections and real-life friendships. For instance, let's say you and I are in the same field. We're both on YouTube, maybe we talk once a year. That's an industry friend. Do I owe that person a full shutdown of any conversation where their name is mentioned? No, but what I do owe them is a baseline of respect. That means not publicly speaking against them, and, ideally, giving them a heads up if something sensitive is coming their way. Look, if someone comes on my podcast and says something about you, I believe I at least owe you a heads up. That's just basic respect. But do I owe it to you to stop every single guest from mentioning your name? Absolutely not. I'm not gonna shut down the conversation every time your name comes up. That's unrealistic. Now, if we're close, like real-life friends, people I've known for years, hang out with regularly, then it's a different situation. In that case, your issues are basically my issues. So, if a guest brings up your name, they can speak their piece. But if it crosses the line into slander, personal attacks, or attempts to damage your character, then I've got to step in. That's where loyalty and mutual respect come into play. Now, when Steve Harvey went on the Pivot podcast, he approached it with a peaceful, almost philosophical tone. But when he appeared on Earn Your Leisure, his energy was completely different. He was much more aggressive. He even said something along the lines of, "I'll knock you out when I see you."
Ass hater and you'll never have a hater that's doing better than you. Always know that. Don't get off the wall to dress some pity any ass boy who ain't got shit going for himself. Now you done stopped your climb up on the wall so you can come down here and talk to his little punk ass. Don't do that, man. I stay away from it. Now do I want to? Yes. Because I'm a human being and I'm hood. Now I used to be a fighter. And I still got hands. They slow, but if you get up on me real close, I can still knock your monkey ass out. I just don't have the quickness I have. But I still know how to turn my hip and shift that weight, and I knock your short ass out. I'll shoot your curve straight out your head.
As for the situation with Mark Curry, that's something you can actually look up and confirm. So, when Katt Williams made those points, they carried weight because they were fact-checkable. However, when he started discussing Bernie Mac and other people, especially the claim that Steve Harvey lied about being homeless, that's not something that can be easily verified. Only Steve knows the truth about that. But from Steve Harvey's perspective, if he feels like Katt Williams twisted his story and spread misinformation to an audience of over 90 million people, his frustration is understandable. If I were in his shoes, I might feel the same way. I might want to confront someone over that, maybe even handle it directly. That said, I'm not 68 years old like Steve. At that age, I imagine you're thinking more about peace and legacy than about clapping back. You've got other priorities. But if it were me right now, I'd probably feel the need to address it head on. At that point, Steve Harvey was clearly upset. Now, though, it seems like he's moved past the initial anger. While he might try to quietly distance himself from Katt Williams moving forward, he has also expressed a willingness to talk things out. He's open to resolving the issue and having a conversation with Katt to clear the air.
And I probably... See, first of all, when I said that I was on stage at Earn Your Leisure, I was really just joking. I slap you, perm, all this. I was really just in front of a whole lot of people. I was really just joking. I don't really, if I had a chance to talk to Katt about anything, I would just ask him what's wrong. Just what's wrong. Let's go to that. Listen to me, man. Just because a person sits on the show and don't hesitate or say or and speaks eloquently, that don't mean it's true. That just don't mean it's true, man. And I probably shouldn't have said anything. That's a regret I have. I really shouldn't have said nothing. Cause we not in the same league, dog. We shooting at two different baskets. I shouldn't even have said nothing. And so really, man, I think I would apologize to him if he took offense to what I said, I was joking, but I would apologize to him. And like I said, if I had a chance to sit down with him, I would just say, hey man, what's wrong? But you gotta look at the whole tone of the interview. If the whole tone of the interview is what everybody else ain't, what everybody else ain't got, what everybody else doing, I think that's kind of like hate and jealousy. And hate and jealousy is a form of grief. You're grieving because obviously all them people you talking about have something you either want or are something that you ain't. And you're grieving. And the funeral becomes the podcast. So now let me roast all of these people.
Now, maybe it's just based on the kind of content I consume or what shows up in my algorithm, but personally, I wouldn't say Katt Williams and Steve Harvey are in completely different leagues. I don't see Katt as being far below Steve in terms of influence or relevance. When it comes to cultural impact, I'd argue they're on a fairly equal playing field. Of course, Steve Harvey might see things differently. He may feel he's outgrown certain circles, he's on Family Feud, he's a mainstream figure, and perhaps he sees himself operating on a different level than Katt. If that's his perspective, that's fine. Still, the fact that he's open to reconciling with Katt Williams is a positive step. But here's what I find interesting. How can Steve be open to settling things with Katt Williams, yet still have unresolved issues with Shannon Sharpe? What are your thoughts? Do you believe Shannon Sharpe did something wrong? Do you think he owed Steve Harvey a certain level of loyalty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.